Guild Wars 2 launched back in August of 2012. Let that one sink in for a bit. Now, when this game initially launched, it received high praise. It was a nice mix-up in the MMO genre, which had admittedly grown a little stale. Every game really just trying to clone World of Warcraft. And now, over 10 years later, it is still kicking and it is still going strong. In this series, I like to cover MMOs that I have previously played that I return to every once in a while to see how it's doing, but those MMOs are in the past now. Now we're moved on to MMOs that I actively play, and Guild Wars 2 is one of them. So kick back, relax. We're going to talk about Guild Wars 2 in very broad strokes. I'm going to talk about my experience with the game, what keeps me coming back, what keeps me being an active player to this MMO. I've got two ways I could go about this video. It could be 30-40 minutes long of me going into every detail in this game, or I could try to be more focused with it. Either way, I have a little guide sheet that we're going to go through, and hopefully we touch on every facet of this game. So let's get started. All right, here we are. I'm a little nervous to be doing this one here because I'm an active player in Guild Wars 2, so there's a lot to talk about. Now, the way this video is going to break down is I'm going to go through basically the story, gameplay, graphics, monetization, all those subjects, and I'm going to have basically a sheet going over, kind of guiding you guys along while we do it. Now, the tone of this video, it's not going to be super edited. The way I like to kind of describe what I'm doing here is it's just like if we all met like at a bar or a pub and we're just talking about a game we love. In this case, it's Guild Wars 2. So if you don't think that's really going to be your vibe, then thanks for clicking on the video. And for everybody else, let's get started. So like I just mentioned, we're going to go through the various topics basically step by step. I'm going to kind of give a broad overview. Maybe I'll go a little ranty in some of the subjects, but I'm going to try to keep a quick pace so we're not here all day. And in the background, it's probably just going to be some like world versus world, or I might do a little bit of some exploration, map completion, and Field of Ruins. And then if I need to tack on something else, I will. But let's go ahead. Let's get the video started. I think the Asura gate just opened up. It was messing up a little bit, so I think we can go through now. And yeah, if you didn't notice, I'm pretty sure the houses up there, they're made out of cardboard. Let's go. All right, let's start off with character creator here. By the way, if you're drinking, it probably helps watch this video a little bit, but not necessary, but I think it will help. So we got character creator here. This is going to be the first thing you go through. Obviously have a lot of characters here, or I've seen people actually have a lot more than this, but I really do try to be like a one character person, but Guild Wars 2 is one of those games where it kind of encourages you to make a shit ton of characters. So I've seen people with a lot more than what I have, and you'll notice, yeah, majority of mine are humans. It's just the way it is. But character creator, what you're greeted with first here is you got your choices of your different races. And what I will say right off the bat for Guild Wars 2 and ArenaNet in general, they do try to push the envelope when it comes to their games they make. And so one of the ways is the diverse, different races that you can play in this game. Not a lot of them are very traditional, like elves, dwarves, etc. Now there are dwarves in this game, but we obviously can't play them. But they do really try to diversify their cast. But really not the biggest thing for me, as you can tell, because I just pick humans all the time. So I'm not really the best person for this. But when you do get to character creator, you do get a lot of options. And so the second choice you're going to make after your race is the profession that you're going to pick. 9 professions here. At launch, there was no Revenant here, so it was just 2 heavy class, 3 medium, 3 light armor, and then yeah, during Heart of Thorns there, they added the Revenant. I'm just going to pick probably what I usually pick, which is like a Guardian Paladin type, or sometimes I like going like a Warrior too, but we'll just go to the Guardian here. And so you get a lot of different options on how to basically customize your character, as far as like their physique, how high, like how tall they are, head options. And I actually prefer this like sort of like character creator where you get presets and then you can kind of change their face details as like much as you want. So I actually really like the character creator in Guild Wars 2. I think this actually does probably one of my favorite character creators, to be honest, because I don't like too many choices where you can like move all their facial structures and everything. That's just too much choice for me. So I appreciate the easy choices that you can make, and the UI here is actually really good and really simple. But again, there's a lot of customization you can do with it. And I'll really quickly just throw something together. I'm not gonna really go through. I just want to show off the character creator, kind of like what do you expect when you first boot up the game, and it's gonna give you some choices here. So one of the first choices, it does give you like this armor piece choice. Now these, at least for Guardian, these are all unique armor pieces. That these are the only way to unlock these is to pick them here. So there's actually incentive to at least make 3 different guardians, or I guess 3 different of each profession. And I call them professions because that's what they're called in Guild Wars 2. But if I say something like a class or a job, that's what I mean essentially. It's just all those terms are just very interchangeable. And then you could pick more choices on like what's your personality like? Do you have like a lot of dignity, ferocity, charm? So these are nice little RP elements that sadly they kind of do away with, and then they like try to come back with it. But in the base game, just know they try to lean on that system a little bit, and it used to work, but then I think they watered it down as well. So they're not super important. Again, this is mostly all RP choices. Now, where you were raised, kind of like your origin story, this will affect the first basically story arc for your character. So it's at least nice to have like all these different options. And then after that, you get another choice, which will then like carry on to your next story arc. And then your final choice has just to do with basically something race specific. So for the humans, they have their human gods. And so which deity do you represent? So you can already see just in Character Creator how many options you have to basically make the character you want. So I think Guild Wars 2 does a pretty fantastic job at just giving you a lot of choices to make the character you want. Now, another thing about this game is just the vast amount of armor skins and different styles you can choose from. The big term for this game is obviously Fashion Wars 2, because the glamour in this game is exceptional as far as how many choices you have, and then the freedom to customize what your character looks like. You know, you don't really have to, you get these transmutation charges that are really easy to come by, at least for a veteran player. I'm not sure how it is for new players, and you can just really change up your what you look like. And then if you have a legendary piece of armor, you can just do it for free at any time you want. And that's how it looks. So, but let's go back to the professions, the jobs, classes. How do each of them play? Do they play in a diverse, like kind of like specific way? Like if you're playing a guardian, do you feel like a guardian? If you're playing elementalist, or do you feel like an elementalist? And I would say yes. I think this game does let you do a lot of buildcraft within each profession, and they all have their like unique little twist to them that does change up the gameplay and how the profession feels. And that's for each one of the professions. So each one of them has their own specialization, elite specialization, that does change up the gameplay enough to make them feel pretty unique. So right off the bat, big kudos to this game for having a great buildcraft system, a lot of choices you can make, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the gameplay section. But I just want you to know that even if you don't really gel with how the base profession of your character plays, just know that later on you get elite specializations, and you might gel with that one a little bit better. So that's the initial impression. That's your character that you're building out. Let's go ahead and move on to the story. Did any of you get stuck in that surrogate there, and you're like in character creation for a bit? Man, I swear we were just like talking about just going from, you know, Divinity's Reached over here, and then, that was weird. Anyways, let's talk about the story real quick. I want to kind of keep it in broad strokes because honestly, I could make a video on every single expansion in Living Story episode to fill up an entire video. And I don't think any of us want to be here that long to listen to me rant, and I'll run out of wine eventually, and that's going to be no good for anybody. So starting off with the core story, again, we're going to be very broad about it. The core story was basically too big for its own good because of how many different branches they made you choose from, and then what did those choices really end up being in the end? And the answer is not very much. I applaud them for how ambitious it was, and there were some moments that hit, like for when you lose your order member. For me, it was Tybalt, and losing him at Claw Island, yeah, that fucking sucked. That hurt real deep. And you know what? I'm a big human guy, especially Ascalonian humans. So losing a Char mentor, I should have been like, good, eat dirt. But instead I was like, dude, I respect you, dude. Anyways, and then moving on to the Living Story. First season wasn't very good. It got axed. It was basically disposable content that they had to bring back because that model wasn't going to work of just releasing stories and then it going away. And eventually we got our first expansion in Heart of Thorns. That one kind of set the tone, not necessarily tone, but the pacing of how all the expansions would work. As in, they started off the expansions as far as the story goes, telling a pretty good story, good pacing. And then eventually probably around the middle mark, they just blitz to the end of the expansion story. And they did it for, obviously, Heart of Thorns, they did it for Path of Fire, and they did it for End of Dragon. So that doesn't stop until then. So pacing, it's a little bit of an issue. Now, when it comes to Living Story, which are the content, the free content updates in between the expansions, Living Story Season 4 is phenomenal. That is when the studio was hitting on all cylinders. They gave us an epic dragon fight, an elder dragon fight, which had many facets of like where you're fighting them. You're going in the sky, you go in their belly, you're fighting them on the outside. Really, really good job. That was basically probably peak Guild Wars 2 story. And then we hit the Ice Brood saga. And this was a really turbulent time in the studio's history. They were laying off a bunch of people. I think they had other ambitions for other games that just were not panning out. And obviously the content that was coming into Guild Wars 2 was pretty lackluster. And I think the community was pretty frustrated that this game that the company was growing this community for, and the community was supporting. The developers themselves were kind of checked out. So it's at that point at Iceberg Saga, at the end of it, with what they did to Mordremoth and Primordus, that I was out. I checked out as far as like really caring about the lore and the story and the characters, because it seemed like the studio was kind of done with them. And then what they did to Primordus with how quickly they killed the first Elder Dragon that we woke up back in Eye of the North. Yeah, that delivers a serious blow to my confidence as far as like what they wanted to do. And then End of Dragon, I actually skipped. I skipped End of Dragon, and there's a few reasons why. The green jade, what they were doing for the aesthetics for factions, I hated it. I hate how green it looks. I don't like the story. I don't like where it was going with the story. I'm not a big fan of Aurene. I don't like her as a character. She all of a sudden starts talking to us, and it's just the tone of the game as soon as Aurene starts talking really shifts into too much feelings, I guess. I don't know. It's weird because the tone of the game, it kind of dances around dark material and it wants to be mature, but then in the writing and the dialogue, there's just too many, I would say, PG Marvel type of kind of like storytelling. I will say this though, Guild Wars 2 is probably one of the funniest, like as far as like comedy. Guild Wars 2 is a very funny game. There's a lot of times where you'll laugh and chuckle just how the characters are acting. So I think that part's really good. And if this was like, if Guild Wars, let's just say that Guild Wars 1 was this super grimdark story and it was all bloody and, oppressive. And then we went to Guild Wars 2 and it was more this PG-13, maybe trying to be a little dark, but never just putting your foot in, not really going all the way. Then I would be upset at Guild Wars 2, their tonal shift. But really, Guild Wars 1 was kind of the same way. They kept it mostly PG-13. There was some dark stuff like in the Crystal Desert, how people were dying out there. But that wasn't really part of the direct narrative. It was more on like what's going on outside. It was like lore journals and stuff. So it was sort of like, it was the end of the studio, and in my opinion, the developers wanting to do Elder Dragons. And then that tonal shift at the same time that, again, I kind of checked out of the story, and I'm still very checked out. Secrets of the Obscure, it was okay. I kind of treat the story now like a Saturday morning cartoon, where it's enough to keep me just watching and be engaged, and I'll tune in because I enjoy it well enough. But, actively thinking about it and going around looking for lore bits and stuff, I'm not invested like that anymore. And I'm kind of waiting for something that I see that I'm like, ooh, that's really good. Now, I want to know more about that. But even Janthier Wilds, there's nothing that's really grabbing me there. Seeing the White Mantle again, that's cool. Titans, that being brought up, that's also cool. But there's a lot of hanging threads in Guild Wars 2 that I'm just I'm ready for them to talk about, or if they've moved on from them, that kind of sucks. For example, Ebonhawk here. This is why we're here, by the way. The Ebon Vanguard and the Ascalonian humans. This is a huge plot point and story that I don't think they ever gave the proper time to. You can tell there was a lot planned for this place because in each one of the books, the actual physical books about the game, they all have a pretty big emphasis on what's going on here. And in game, it's just, they kind of like drizzle like a little bit of what's going on, and it's never the main focus. So I'm really focusing on the good old the Ascalonian humans to get their proper time in the sun, because they teased at it in game plenty of times, where I think it was in season 1 or season 2, where you're out there talking to some Priory people and they're looking for an artifact that'll identify the Ascalonian like bloodline, the royal bloodline. And so like, where is that plot point going? I'm kind of just really tired of waiting for something to happen here, and maybe it's not going to happen. Dougal, actually, in Janthier Wilds, he's one of the guild master of the Lion's Arch guild place. He's a big character in one of the books. He is the main character, and so he has to deal with the story with dealing with the Connor, and then basically the artifact that will unite the Char legions. And so he got a little bit of time in Janthier Wild. So I'm hoping that we're moving back to some of this subject material, but I don't know. Again, story's fine. Tone is not really what I want. I'm a grimdark guy. I like my oppressive themes and stuff, but Guild Wars 2 is always kind of like on that balance line, on the edge of being that. But I enjoy the story enough to keep playing it. It's just I'm not super engaged anymore. And so like that was basically me talking about the tone and basically the theme of the game. Just like, again, broad strokes, very, very PG-13 and stuff. The characters and stuff, I think a lot of them are really good. A lot of them can be hit and miss too. Some shout outs, some favorites of mine. Obviously, Logan and Ridlock are two of my favorite characters. Their banter is great. They're the best part about the books that they're in. And then Queen Jenna is a freaking badass. I don't know why she doesn't have more screen time. During the White Mantle Civil War, when they're in the, attacking Divinity's Reach, and she's literally just snapping their necks with like the click of her finger. Oof. She's badass. There's just a lot of interesting things going on with the human side, and we're not getting it. Instead, we're getting bears that talk, and I mean, I know they talk. We're getting Kodins that are sitting there calling like they're the warrior son Hunter who's been out killing stuff, sitting there calling him Pookie Bear. Oh, I didn't want Pookie to know Pookie. And I get that. That's cute, you know, but it's just kind of like why I'm tuned out. I'm like, please stop calling him Pookie. He's a full-grown bear, for God's sake. Please stop that. So with the story and the lore overall, it's pretty good, guys. It's pretty good. It's good enough to keep you engaged. I can see why people are really in love with it, but I also can see why like people probably like myself are kind of checked out and kind of waiting to see if there's anything else going on. And then I guess I'll drop in here real quick. The other races are, it seems like they've run out of material with them. They're very watered down now. The Norn just feel like big humans. The Char, they kind of just seem like they've been watered down as well. They're supposed to be this warmongering race. Not really giving those vibes anymore. Selvari, they definitely run out of things with. And I think they probably played their part for the majority of the story because they had big beats already for most of the early game. And so really the most interesting race to me, and that has like the most to offer still, is the humans. And that's a little funny in a fantasy game to be saying that, but yeah, I think the other races and cultures have kind of they're just kind of boring. There's no conflict, there's no tension anymore when it comes to the major players, the major cultures and nations in the game. And that's kind of like, that stinks. Everybody's kind of like friends now, and that's pretty lame for a game. But that's the story bit. We're done with the story. Now we're going to talk about the graphics and the art style. So I think we'll sit back down and we'll just kind of go through some more gameplay, and we'll talk about the graphics. So let's get out of here real quick. So really quick, let's talk about the graphics. I think the graphics and the art style that they've gone with this game, very distinct. You can look at this game, you're like, that's Guild Wars 2, and I think that's the biggest thing that should matter for a game like this. You need to have a distinct art style, something that says, yeah, this is that game. This stands out, makes you stand out from other games. So like when you look at World of Warcraft, you know that's World of Warcraft. When you look at Final Fantasy, you know that's Final Fantasy. So again, Guild Wars 2 does a really good job with that. Kind of got this paintbrush look to it. Sometimes I think it works. Sometimes I think things look a little bad, but overall, I think the graphics are really nice. Now, when it comes to the UI and just clutter and systems, this is really bad. This over here, this panel gets filled up really quickly as far as how much crap they are just telling you. If you have your dailies up, if you're tracking any achievements, any events that are going on, like special events, I'm not talking about actual world events, you're like the world versus world, just like stuff like that. It just, that side of the screen gets so cluttered, and I try to make a very minimum UI as possible. Again, I'm more of a immersive player. I'm not really a systems player. So UI wise, this thing can look like an eyesore. And then let's talk about the achievement panel here. Oh my god, this is them trying to be different and it not landing for me at all. They call this the achievements, but really this is like your quest panel. It's like your quest hub. It gives you something else to do, and it is a jumbled mess. They really need to think about how to fix this, or just, I don't know, make it less of a pain point. There's just a lot of things on here. It's impossible. It would be impossible. Let me backtrack a little bit. For a new player to come in here and know where anything is. Holy crap. Some of these things are so old that it's just, yeah, as a new player, dude, this ain't it, chief. This is so hard to get into. And I feel like with MMOs in general, because they are developed for such a long period of time, you want to onboard as many new players as possible. And this UI, this achievement panel here, which is essentially your quest and giving you content to do, is really bad. They need to fix this. But the overall graphics of the game, the art style they've chosen here, this is the base game, by the way. It's not one of the newer areas. I could probably go to the new areas. Let's go to one of the new areas real quick. Hang on. I'm gonna roll back and then you just follow me. It'll work. I'll take you through it. This is tall grass, right? Not a funny joke. Actually, I'm not that tall right now. Hang on. Just gonna eat a little. Just gonna drink a little bit. Got bigger. Cool. See how that works? That's syrup tonic or something. But let's focus up. Let's talk about why we're here. This is the Enchanted Wilds. This is their latest map. And out of the 2 new maps that we've gotten, this is by far the best map they've done in a long time. I'm trying to think of the last map that they've done this well that looks this good. I don't think any of the End of Dragons maps come close to this. So maybe we're talking about, I don't know. That should say something. So I'm glad they've returned to this type of art style, more, I guess, peaceful maps, more of a calmer aesthetic, a really strong theme in this. It's like a mountainous delta that goes into the body of water. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but this is a really nice scene. Their graphic style is really on point, and their artists know what they're doing when they, I feel like, put in the effort, or I guess have the time, because not every map looks like this, but this map is gorgeous. So even though this is like an older MMO by today's standards, I guess, they still have what it takes to make this look absolutely beautiful. So we're done talking about the graphics. We're going to move on to the gameplay section and kind of talk about the actual like systems of the game. And I'm not the biggest I'm not like the biggest raider or a hardcore PvP player, but I do have like 8,000 hours in this game or something like that, maybe 6,000. I don't know. I have a lot of hours in this game, so I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit. But we're gonna get out of this nice area. I'm gonna go sit back down and come on. So here we are. This is the second map in the latest expansion at the moment. Not as great, but it's still a fine map. But now we're going to talk about the systems in the game. How does the game actually play? So let's start with PvE first. For PvE, you have open world activities, you have dungeons technically, you have fractals of the mist, you have raids, you have convergences now. There's a lot of things to sink your teeth into with PvE. That is by far the biggest facet of this game, and obviously what probably keeps a majority of the player base around. And there's plenty to do. Now, how are all these systems? Guild Wars 2 by far does the best open world content for an MMO. Period. Full stop. The way they have their event system planned out, the way that they have like world bosses planned, this game has great open world content, and by far the best, I think. And the system runs really well with a lot of players on screen. Like, I don't get like any stuttering or anything like that, and they have a lot of options in the graphics setting to kind of smooth out anybody's experiences, depending on kind of like what depending on like kind of what hardware you have. Now past the open world, dungeons, well, that's an abandoned system. I think the people that they had make the dungeons no longer work at the company, and they don't know how the old dungeons work anymore, which is fine. The dungeons were really cool at launch. They had some pretty good ideas. I had a good experience with them. I'm not going to say anything too bad about them. I kind of just wish they would keep doing dungeons, because I guess we'll move on now to Fractals of the Mist. Fractals of the Mist doesn't really do it for me. Again, if we want to go back to tone and story, the way fractals, I guess, interact with the world, it just isn't it for me. It's too intangible, Asuran sci-fi tech in my fantasy game. So fractals, it doesn't do it for me. I've done up to floor, I guess, tier difficulty 100. So I have all the agony resistance gear that I need to do that, and then once I beat, that level 100, I was basically done with fractals. I know they've added fractals, they've continued to do it over the years, but just as a system overall, I much more prefer dungeons. I like going to a location and actually seeing it in world and then going in, instead of fractals, which basically just take different points of the time. It could be past, present, or future, and then you just kind of play through a scenario. That's okay sometimes, but to be the only like dungeon-like system, it's just, no, it just doesn't do it for me. And then we have raids. Raids I did during Heart of Thorns, but again, I've said in many of my other videos, not a big raider. At some point, I just get tired of the progression differences between players, and some people get it, some people don't. And there's just a lot of hours, a lot of commitment, and I'd rather just be doing something else. And then usually when I do clear really hard content, I only do it once. I'm not a big farmer as far as like doing re-clears and having to do the same thing over and over and over again. I don't like that. I've never been a player like that. I like to experience things once and then maybe a few more times after that. But if it becomes like a daily routine or like a job or like like a schedule, no, it's just not. That's not going to happen for me. But the raids overall are pretty good, in general, as far as like mechanics. Now I know the participation rate for raids is abysmal. Which is why they barely do anymore. I know they're going to do a new one for this expansion, but I know the numbers for raids are really rough. And before we jump into PvP, so for this game, with all those activities I'm talking about, how does it play? This video is however long now, and we haven't talked about the combat system. Guild Wars 2's combat system is phenomenal. I think it's my favorite combat system in any MMO and in probably most games. It's very fluid. It feels really good. It's like a tab target, but you can just swing at air type of combat. It feels amazing. It's really nice to play. And like I mentioned back in Character Creator, you have so many different build options just in each profession that there's so many different ways to play. And so you're never, if you stick with just with like one profession, you're probably, you have plenty to mess around with. I don't think you'll ever get bored with that. And they can do a lot of things. Now, how is the balance with that? Balance, it changes, year to year. It's, nothing's ever truly balanced. I guess the most important thing about balance is the development team actually trying to balance the game? Are meta shifting? And from what I can tell, just playing it, yes, they do balance it. Metas do shift. Things get better. Things get worse. And so they do balance the game. So that's a positive. I think that's as much as you can say on balance. It's not atrocious. It's not horrible. I mean, now they've had times and periods where it has been like that, but overall now I think they have a good handle on the balance and the game's pretty well. Now, is it the greatest thing ever as far as like, every profession feeling completely unique? Not really. Things are kind of homogenized as far as boons and stuff. I know boon spam has always been a problem. I think boons in general, how readily available they are to each profession is a problem. I feel like boons should be, specifically given to certain professions. Like Guardian, for example, should obviously have Aegis and Protection. Those should be like 2 boons that they're really, really good at providing all the time. And then maybe warriors are really good at giving people might. I feel like every profession and then their specialization should focus around 1 or 2 boons. But at the moment, there's just some professions that can give out every single boon and they will never have any downtime. And that is a problem. But I feel like that problem is too late to fix probably. So maybe for Guild Wars 3. But that's just balance. It doesn't really matter. Does the game feel really good to play? Yes. Yes, it does. This is probably why I stick around with this game, even though the story, again, I said it's like a Saturday morning cartoon for me. Really doesn't do it for me. I'm not really that engaged, but I'm there to enjoy it and then just kind of move on. The combat, this is what keeps me coming back. Just the way this game plays, really good, really fun to play. When they do add new stories and stuff, yeah, it's a good time. I really enjoy convergences as well. Convergences are just large scale, lots of people on the screen doing like, different tasks. I feel like convergences are a lot of fun. Do they get boring? Of course they do, because everything's usually very repetitive, but I feel like for what they are and how unique they are to the MMO space, it's really good. I really like convergences as well. Now the question is, do I go into PvP to show PvP? I don't think I will. I haven't played PvP in a long time. I fell off PvP probably around Path of Fire is when I really stopped playing PvP. I used to dabble in it still a little bit during when they added the Wizard's Vault. So I guess that's Secrets of the Obscura, because the daily achievements or quests that you need to do for PvP are actually really easy. So I have played a little bit, but nothing like as serious as doing tournaments or trying to rank up anymore. I have a few legendary pieces, so I want people to be like, you don't do anything. Yes, I have the legendary back piece from doing PvP. I have it as Ruik's Cape right now because you can change it to whatever you want. But that's where I got my back piece. So I did a crap ton of PvP for that. And obviously I have some pieces for my helmet and my shoulders. And I'm basically just waiting on enough money. I only have 400 or close to 500 gold to make my other pieces of legendary gear. And I feel like I have more than that though. I do. I have the bow. I've all there. You can see all my legendary pieces up there. So I do have quite a bit of legendary pieces, but I just kind of wait for gold to pull the trigger on it. But PvP overall, very fun. I know they wanted to make this a PvP more focused game back in the day, and that never really did happen. As far as like the community taking off, and I just feel like with MMOs, I've said this I guess in other videos, having so many different game types in an MMO, it is a problem to keep each one of those player bases really satisfied and happy. And honestly, I feel like PvP is just done so much better in actually PvP focused games. And this shouldn't really focus on that hardcore audience. Now though, I know they have like the tournaments set up and all those systems for ranking, and I think that's great. But PvP overall, it's just fine. It's really good. You can sink your teeth into it and you can have a good time. It's just, I don't know how serious any new potential players should try to get into PvP, just because it's a very complicated game. And there's been players who have never dropped, doing PvP, and they will just steamroll you once you get anywhere like close to their ranking matchmaking skill. And then outside of, PvP, PvE, what else is there? Well, there's World versus World. World versus World is fantastic. I actually think it's a better system than Cyrodiil. Guild Wars 2 came out first, but Cyrodiil and World vs. World are very similar as far as like what they provide and what they let the player base experience. It's just this large scale 1 versus 1, so 3 faction conflict, and it's a good time. It's basically what I think every MMO going forward should strive for, is this queue in open world that, again, you queue into, so it's not necessarily matchmaking, but anybody can just queue in at any time, and then you just join this map where everybody has the same goal. And in this case, it is World versus World, where you're just killing, the other teammates, you're taking territory, you're taking out supply tracks and stuff, and you're running around with your commander and doing like different objectives. I think this is a really strong mode for an MMO, because MMOs are all about being in these large, like open areas, or just doing a task with a bunch of people. And then even in World versus World itself, it has like its own progression system. You have your rank up system. It has its own legendaries. So there's a lot of progression going on in World versus World. Each facet of this game has a lot of progression, where you can get everything you need in this game as far as equipment, gear, obviously exclusive things like cosmetic things like minis and stuff. They each have their own like different things. So this is actually the great thing about Guild Wars 2. This is a good time to talk about that. Is if you get bored with saying doing fractals or dungeons, you can just jump onto PvP, and it's almost like an entirely different game, but you're still familiar with it. And then once you get bored with PvP, you can jump on over to World versus World. Still kind of like PvP, but giant blobs fighting in these mass, big squads is different than the 5v5, or what is it, 66? I don't remember I don't remember exactly what the players' numbers are for those, because I know they have like 2v2s in there as well. But anyways, you get a different experience in it. So I think that is a phenomenal part of Guild Wars 2, because each one of those systems, yeah, they don't get the most love. Like World vs. World was like neglected for a very long time, and still is kind of, but at least the bones of it are set up to people still enjoy it all the time. All these different game modes are still very much still played today and very active. So you can't go wrong in either one of them. So that's like the gameplay game part of it. The gameplay game part of it. Yeah, I'm going to coin that. This happens when you drink. Let's talk about a little bit more of the, community side. So the RP value with the immersion. This is tough, because like I said before, with some of the maps looking good and some of the maps looking this game has the potential of being really immersive feeling. Like this map feels really good. The weather's different now. We got rain now. It's turning a little bit of night. The scale of the world. There is immersion to be had here. But then, like I mentioned back at in Divinity's Reach, where the top of the buildings, they're like cut out like cardboards if you go fly next to them. And I know you weren't supposed to have those in there because that map was designed before mounts, but it's there. So when you see it, you're never going to be able to unsee it. But so like the immersion, it's pretty good, pretty decent here. I used to be a big RPer in this game in general. And then the like emotes and stuff. We didn't, so the game started with the base emotes, obviously. And then they didn't really start adding emotes until the Ice Period Saga, I think, is when they gave us our first emote during that prologue in the Blood Legion homelands. So that was that's cool that they started adding emotes and like the ability to like sit anywhere you want, and they've actually now added chairs and stools and stuff which you can sit in the world. So it does have that now, but at launch and for the longest time did not have that. So I say it does a decent job. And then other than RP, how are things like collectibles, mounts, mini pets? Pretty good, actually. A lot of nice little pets, a lot of nice or they're just called minis in this game. Really good at that. And then the mount system, best mount system in any MMO in general. Now for me personally, if I had to pick whether a game had mounts or not mounts, I would pick not to have mounts. Mounts just really just speed you up going through games and maps in general. You don't feel as like connected with them in general. Like I'm always flying over this, but like look at this little creek over here. This is beautiful. But most players are not going to stop and appreciate this because you're just flying around all the time. Or when you do, you zip through it. Hi baby, you made an appearance. How'd you get over here? How'd you get in my game? Hi. Okay, I'll see you later. Good girl. Funny story about my dog. She knocked over my green screen the other day and like smashed against my wall in the drywall. So now it's got a little mark on it. Thanks, baby girl, because she likes to like lay up against it. Okay, bye. Okay, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, mounts. So mounts in this game, but they are phenomenal. They're really good. They're the best mounts in any MMO ever because each mount is very different and unique. Now, are there some mounts that are better than others? Yes. Skyscale, by far the best one overall because it can fly and it's pretty fast. But again, I feel like we did lose something as far as the details to maps and just the exploration in general when we did get mounts. and that's a shame. I miss being able to walk around. Now, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. It's just, as humans, we are wired to, okay, if we have a mount or we don't have a mount, what are you going to use to go, ticking off the map exploration? You're going to use a mount, it's just how we are. So at least Guild Wars 2, when they did add mounts, they did put a unique spin on it. By far, again, the best in any MMO. So good that, Warcraft stole their flying mechanics. So again, another like A++ for Guild Wars 2 as far as why I'm still playing it, because the mounts feel really good in it. Do I wish they were gone? Yeah, but that ship has sailed and it's never going to happen. And then we can briefly talk about crafting and like kind of smaller things like fishing. It does have fishing now. We got that in End of Dragon, and we got our like own little boats, which again, that's a really cool thing that they gave us as well. Yeah, Guild Wars 2 gives you a lot of cool things. But crafting, not a crafter. Do I have all the crafting professions or disciplines unlocked and maxed out? I think I do have most of them, because you used to need them for when you were crafting legendaries. I don't think you need them as much anymore. They give you a vendor who will do basically that job for you for some ectoplasm. But the crafting system is really simple. I appreciate that as non-crafter. So that's really as much as I can say on it. I usually don't craft, and this game had me craft because it was so easy. And then player housing. We do have player housing. Let me show you my player house. My player house. What a great thing. You might be asking yourself, well, your decorations are inside. And you know what? They're absolutely not. I have done nothing with this player housing. I don't know what it is. I don't like it very much. It's really good. I know there's a lot of tools you can. I haven't played with it very much. And when I have tried to play with it, I just feel like it's kind of clunky. I guess I don't know what people or the community's opinion is on housing. I know we've wanted it for the longest time. It's just it just hasn't done it for me yet, which is weird because we have guild halls. Let me go to my guild hall real quick, and I can show you what I've done there instead, which is when this came out back in Heart of Thorns, did a lot more with this. Like we did the whole trees. We have a lot more going on. I mean, I spent a lot more time doing this type of decoration, and I feel like this is just easier. I don't know. I really haven't sat down with the housing system in general, and I'm not the biggest housing guy. I just kind of like to play around a little bit, but I think it can work, especially if I can do just like things that I've done in this place. But so we do have housing. You do have to have Janthir Wilds for it, but it's in game, so that's something. I mean, we'll see what they do with housing in general. I would like probably more spaces. Maybe it's just the location I'm not the biggest fan of. I would prefer more castle type areas or something like that. But we do have guild halls still, but you need a guild for that, and these are pretty expensive. I don't know how easy these are to get anymore, honestly. But moving on, we'll talk about the daily and weekly system. They used to have monthly system too, but they don't have that anymore. That's all right. The Wizard's Vault here is, I think, a really good basic system. This is like the casual player experience here, where you log in, you look at your Wizard's Vault, what you need to do, what different activities you can change it between PvE, World versus World, or PvP, and it'll give you things to do. You have your weekly, obviously, so you have your daily, your weekly, and then the special is usually just based on the season and stuff. Dude, this spear one, I didn't realize this was a thing until after I beat the campaign of Janthir Wilds, and I wasn't using a spear that entire time. I don't know why, so I'm a little bit behind on that. I should have that done, but I don't. But that's the casual people's content there, and I very much enjoy it because it does just give you something to do and log on and just engage with the game, because playing this game is really nice. And then a little bit on the achievement system here. Again, like I said earlier, it is a mess as far as like if you were a new player trying to track all this down. Now, I have a lot of achievements. I think this is a lot, at least. So I don't care about achievement points anymore. I think I've hit plenty for if they have a Guild Wars 3 and they have some sort of carryover system and you need like achievement points. I think I've probably hit the high bar. So that's achievements. Yep, and I think we have one more section to go. If you've made it this far in the video and you're not a subscriber, consider it. I'm going to cover one of these MMOs in this series more regularly. I just haven't decided yet because I need to go through them all. But one last section here, we're going to talk about the monetization and the updates of the game, and then we'll just have our closing thoughts. So let's get out of here. Let's head back to Divinity's Reach. You're thinking it, yeah. Cardboard houses up there. Now you're never going to unsee it. Before we get into monetization, how many glasses of wine did it take for me to complete this video? 3. 3 is the magic number. It took me 3 glasses of wine to record this video. So I'm feeling pretty good. Let's talk about monetization. So how is this game monetized? Well, it is a buy to play game. and it has seasonal updates that are free. Well, at least they were back in the day for Living World, Living Story. They have changed that because they don't do Living Story anymore. We're more on we're on a yearly expansion cadence now. And then once you buy that yearly expansion, that X-Back box, it's not a box anymore. Once you have that, you get all the content related to that expansion being updated for the entire time. So you'll basically have the complete story there. So no more Living Story. If you miss it, you have to go back and buy it. No, you buy the expansion, you get the whole thing, even if you don't play it all, and you come back a year later, you get it. So that is actually a really fantastic system overall. Sub-based games are, if you only play so many of them, you know, at some point you're gonna be like, this is way too many sub games and I just cannot keep up with, I'm not getting my money's worth anymore. But for Guild Wars 2, super casual. It lets you come back anytime you want, and it's very, very generous with its content as far as how much it gives you, how much gameplay you're gonna get out of it. It is a crazy amount overall. This is basically one of the best games for a new player or a casual player to play. Now you're thinking, whoa, hang on now, just the box price? That's not really how an MMO works. And you're right, they do have a cash shop, they do have a store which you can buy gems and then take those gems and take them to the store and buy, you know, stuff that they update the store with. And that kind of stinks, except for the fact that you can take your gold that you earn in game, which gold is very, very easy to come by if you are any sort of a regular player, and turn those into gems and then buy all the gem store stuff. It is a fantastic system overall, and it is crazy, really crazy that other MMOs that have a cash shop and they also have a subscription don't offer a service or a conversion rate thing like Guild Wars 2 does. It is baffling. Guild Wars 2 is so freaking just generous with how they monetize their game, and it is something you don't see very often. So that's a little bit of the monetization. Let's just end off on the game's health. How's the game doing? I think the yearly model is working out pretty well. You know, if you're not jiving with Secrets of the Obscure, for example, it's only a year long, and then you can come back the next year and check out Janthir Wilds if something there is to pique your interest. You know, they're not trying to tell this multi-year-long saga anymore. That's over with. I feel like they wanted to get that done with during End of Dragons, and they did that. So now they can take more bite-sized stories and do those and explore a lot of different things that just, again, haven't been addressed in the universe and the lore so far, that have just been like lamenting. You know, I talked about Ascalon earlier. Yeah, I'm really hoping that's the next expansion, but who knows? And then how often do those patches come out? I think it's every few months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. I don't know. You get more maps after the expansion comes out. I'm not exactly very cued into how long those take to come out, but they do take a bit to come out, and we're gonna get a new map. You know, this one's going to be a little bit different than Secrets of the Obscure, so it's kind of hard to tell how that time and that cadence is going to be, and then what we're all going to get. But we are going to get more content, and it does come out frequently enough. And thankfully, Guild Wars 2 does something like events, special events, seasonal events, like Halloween and Christmas extremely well. Even though it's content that maybe doesn't get the biggest update year to year, it's still just fun to go in there and, you know, play the games that are only around for the seasonal, you know, that seasonal time frame. So that's it on Guild Wars 2. Man, this was a video to make. I was really dreading it because there's just so much to talk about. And I don't feel like I did half a good job at talking about any of these things, really. I've just been kind of rambling about a lot of the subjects. But if you take nothing away from this video, if you are an old player of Guild Wars 2 or somebody who hasn't never played Guild Wars 2 and you like MMOs, you kind of like some of the things I showed off, consider picking up this game. It is fantastic for new players. Aside from like the UI and questing the collection system, that is a huge pain in the ass. But actually playing the game, oof, feels really, really good. And for that reason, it is a game that I'm still actively playing. This is not a game that I return to every so year to check in on it. I'm playing this game at least once a week, at least. So we have one more game on the list that I'm an active player of, and that is Final Fantasy XIV. And lately, that game has not been going so well for me. You could probably tell why, because same reason why I kind of fell off this game a little bit as far as the narrative's going, because I'm a big story guy. I'm a big immersion guy. I like tone, writing, all those things. And when those things start to be a little inconsistent, I start to have some issues as far as being engaged. So I don't know when that video will be out. Usually I like to let these videos sit for a little bit, let people get engaged. I like to comment and stuff. So I don't know when I'll be seeing you next for an MMO, but going to be doing more of my usual videos on this channel. So that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for making it this long. If you made it to the end of the video, I know it's a longer one, but hopefully you had a drink and something to enjoy and maybe just me on the background. But anyways, I will see you next time. Take care and peace. Or do I just want to go to the void? Actually, I'm out of space over here. I actually do have to go this way.